afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to have you here in another webinar sponsored by the Master Program of Pedagogía de los Idiomas, ¿no? Or English Teaching. It is a pleasure for me to introduce Karina Izquierdo. I want to know if Karina is there. Can you listen to me, Karina?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Hi, Karina.
Okay, I'm
there
here.
we
Hi.
go. There we go.
Hi.
Okay, so a little bit of Karina. Well, Karina, she has 26 years of teaching experience. She started from the very beginning as a teacher of primary, right? Then she was also a teacher in secondary, I guess, somehow.
That's correct. No.
And you are currently working with university students right now, right?
Correct.
Okay. Karina is, she owns a master in Educación Superior and also in Pedagogía de los Idiomas from Casa Grande University. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Karina, since you are a product of Universidad Casa Grande. And I remember when you were in class, excellent student, and you learn from us and we learn from you. That's what happened with the students. So Karina, they are all yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Hugo, and thank you for those words. And of course, I take your sentence in which you said that I'm here from learning from the whole people who are going to listen to this webinar. And of course, we are going to learn each other. So let me share a screen in this moment. Okay, we want to, okay. I would like to begin this presentation by asking these three questions. What would you do if your paragraph were rejected because of lack of organization? What would teachers do if their students didn't develop any ideas for writing an essay or for writing a paragraph? Are teachers assigning writing instead of teaching writing? Well, I have more questions, but we would take like the whole day trying to solve all the questions, trying to answer all the questions. For the past 15 years, students have struggled writing any text, any sentence, any paragraph or essay. It seems that teachers and students haven't found yet the precise way, like the exact technique to write a coherent paragraph. And why do I tell you this? Because my objective with this presentation is to share with you my experience using scaffolding strategies to write simple and organized paragraphs. So this is the title, the topic of today, scaffolding strategies that improve writing skills and in order to have a perfect paragraph. The objectives of this workshop are to identify the various scaffolding strategies in order to write a coherent paragraph and to analyze the mentor text in order to write a 5-paragraph essay. Okay, so let's start. Giving a little bit of general information, some international studies, some theorists, like Gonka in 2016, Listiani in 2018, Yusuf Yusal, and again Yusuf in 2019, they mentioned that students or second language learners hesitated when they wrote writing, when they did writing. They felt uncomfortable. They had hesitation towards the practice of writing. They had difficulty when they wrote any text or any passage or any sentence. And if you see the other side of the screen, a bad thing that is happening here in our country, according to EF English Proficiency Index last year, Ecuador positioned 93 of 100 countries, which means that the English proficiency level is very low. What are the reasons? Who knows? Because it is not only writing, it's the other skills that students are having problems. So, what is happening, colleagues? Are we giving less attention to our students' needs? Do we think that our students know how to write essays or how to write paragraphs or sentences? Are we really applying strategies for students to write paragraphs in a proper way? Well, learners are continuously struggling when they write any text, when they write whatever thing in sentences or paragraphs or an article. Why? Perhaps because they don't have like a structure to follow. So because of this situation, because of this context and the real problem that we are facing, especially me as a college teacher, 2 years ago, I began a challenging educational project with a group of intermediate students, and I found that some undergraduate learners had deficient written production in their text, as evidenced by the low scores obtained in the diagnostic test, which revealed these three things: lack of organization, poor development of ideas, and this non-existent logical sequencing. So with these three things that I found in their text, among others, I was really, really worried about their situation when they started writing things. So I began the revision of literature based on scaffolding strategies during the writing process. So as you can see here on the screen, this study was based on collaborative communication, since the students were actively engaged in the production of effective work in groups. Now, the term scaffolding comes from Vygotsky's and Bruner's theory. Bruner mentions that scaffolding for learning is developed gradually. It is a process in which learners worked step by step until they felt confident working independently. Bruner also affirms that teachers provide scaffolding strategies that involve the use of structures, the use of activities, and temporary support for the students to construct knowledge. Well, I had other researches about scaffolding strategies, but the most important and in where I focused was Bruner. Now, after mentioning the most relevant literature, it is necessary, and I have to clarify, that there are several scaffolding strategies that teachers can apply in their classes. Considering the relevance of developing good writing skills, the writing process begins in an oriented way that goes from the simplest that is brainstorming, which is like the first phase of the writing process, to the most complex form of writing, that is the essay. I have to emphasize that brainstorming is also a scaffolding strategy that is considered an immediate solution to the difficulties that a student presents in the writing learning process. So, this study makes the scaffolding strategies a critical part of a teacher's plan to what? To achieve positive outcomes in learners' writing performance. Okay? So that was my innovation. Those 4 strategies that I included in the whole process of this project. So this is another important part. The innovation was applied through the backward design approach by Wiggins and McTighe in 2005. What is that? Backward design approach is a process that we as teachers use to design learning experiences and instructional techniques in order to achieve specific learning goals. Okay? So this approach offers clear objectives in both short and long-term goals. So what was the objective of my innovation? To have students write an organized and coherent essay. Using what? Using those 4 scaffolding strategies. Okay? Now, maybe you can ask yourself what transfer goal means. Okay, so let me explain what transfer goal is. It is what the students should know and be able to do in order to use or transfer knowledge through education and then apply them to authentic tasks, authentic activities. So in my case, I wanted my students to communicate simple ideas, to produce ideas, to produce new vocabulary, to use transition words, to apply appropriate word order, to use subject and verb agreement, to write a thesis statement, so that in the future or in the long run and on their own, they could develop short essays and current topic. So this is the final thing that I wanted from my students. I wanted them to develop their own essays on current topics or any topic. So, in order to do this, in order to apply the backward design using authentic task, let me show you the performance task. So, in this private university, where I am a B1 level teacher, I had to concentrate in doing essays, not paragraphs. So I think that here in the audience, we have A1 teachers, A2 level teachers, and B1 level teachers. So what I'm going to show you is for students who are at B1 level. I gave them a role. They were reporters of a journalism club. I placed the situation. That means that it was like the university's authorities observed like strange behaviors among students. So they were really worried and they created a campaign of motivation. So based on that motivation or based on that campaign, the students had to research, they had to gather, they had to collect a lot of information about academic stress. So academic stress was the topic that the students had to develop as an essay. Now, the performance. The students had a lot of activities to do before doing the essay. They had to make interviews to people from different generations because they had to know what the teachers thought, a 60-year-old teacher or a 70-year-old teacher and a 20-year-old student, what they thought about academic stress, how they stress, why did they get stressed. Well, a lot of information. And once they collected all the information, they gathered in the classroom, and I started applying my innovation with these scaffolding strategies. After that, the students and 3 faculty members selected the top 3 essays, and finally the winners were given certificates, and that's it. By the end of this innovation, or by the end of this project, we had reflections, and we put those reflections on a technological tool called Padlet, but I'll show you that later on. Well, in order to write the essay, I gave them a rubric with 5 components. And the components were the content, organization, sentence fluency, word order, conventions. Remember that in order to choose a topic, I checked the CEFR for languages that gives clear guidelines concerning the writing standards that must be met by students of a B1 level when enrolling a course. So that's what I did. And I considered academic stress a good topic to develop. Now, here we are. This is phase number 1, the initiating phase. Let me emphasize that I chose 2 groups. One was called control group and the other one experimental group. I both gave the diagnostic test. Both groups watched the tech talk, but only the experimental group received the innovation. I only applied the innovation to the experimental group. So the students began watching this tech talk about foreign languages. Then they took notes in pairs. So from that very moment, I observed that they were interested. Why? Because they felt confident working in pairs. And then we had group discussion. So being the first phase, you probably think that it was the easy one. But let me show you the second part. So the second part is really was, in my opinion, the hardest part, because I needed to explain what scaffolding was. The term scaffolding, what does it mean? Because they didn't even know in Spanish what scaffolding means. And I started giving all the indication, this instruction guided by me. They gathered in pairs and they started brainstorming ideas. They started generating ideas. And then they collaborate each other and share opinions, and they put all the information, all their ideas in this first technological tool called Answer Garden, where we all saw all the words and all the ideas, all the sentences that came from their minds. Now, after that, my turn was to explain or to model the mentor text. And let me show the structure. As you can see, this is the structure. This was the mentor text, which I modeled. This stage builds up students' understanding of the purpose of the text. What can be modeled? What to write? How to start? How to revise and edit? how to choose relevant information, how to present information and ideas. Well, I have to admit that it was hard at the beginning. First, the students didn't even know how to start writing in Spanish. Believe me, I feel really uncomfortable saying this, but this is our new generation who don't know what a sentence is and how is it formed, what is a subject or what is a predicate and where are the verb tenses. So if they don't know in Spanish, how will they do things in English? So it was really, really hard for me to start from the very beginning, like if I was teaching preschool or maybe the primary school. But I had to do it. I scaffolded the essay by first brainstorming to generate ideas. If you see the first line that said hook sentence, that was the most important sentence. And once they thought about a question or maybe a sentence, they had to know that that sentence had to catch the reader's attention. And then I explained how to organize thoughts and how to organize arguments. I demonstrated how to write an introductory paragraph and give feedback. Believe me, I went step by step. Using the writing process as the larger framework, the students were encouraged to apply the scaffolding strategies. And that is a significant thing to mention right now, that scaffolding stimulates collaboration and support among learners. When the student works with another person, with his peer, they both feel confident. They can interact each other. They can elaborate or they can create new ideas. So at that very moment, they are creating new learning. Well, once they finished their introductory paragraph, we all checked together, we all gave feedback, and then we moved on to the next part that was the content. As you see, there were 3 paragraphs of content, and we used the same thing. In the first place, in the second place, finally, those were like examples, but they had to use other transition words. And finally, the concluding paragraph that was the same model, step by step. They knew that the conclusion is a summary of the whole essay, but said in different words, in other words. And at the end, they had to mention or they had to give a comment or to give an advice or to give an idea or maybe ending the essay with a question. Okay? Here, I can show you a complete essay, of course, with a different topic. This was a topic about English teacher for young people. And with this complete essay, I could model the new one that was about academic stress. So the whole process, colleagues, took a month, 4 weeks of 4 hours a week. It was really, really hard, but I felt, and we all felt comfortable and pleased and happy that we could say at the end that they did this essay. Because it's not easy, not even for teachers to write essays, believe me. Because we can have a lot of things, a lot of ideas in our mind, but when we have to write down all these things, we need to think first. We need to brainstorm and to analyze and to classify the words. So that was a really complicated thing for students who have like who were lacked of organization and their writing were really, really poor. Now maybe you are asking yourself, okay, now how can I prove or how can I know that the students are improving their writing performance? That was the same question I made myself. I asked myself. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I forgot to say this part, I skipped it. This is the final phase. Once all the students developed their own essays, I put them on the board and everybody started giving comments about it. And there were comments like, oh, I like your hook sentence, but I think that the thesis statement is missing here. Another comment was, your conclusion was awesome. I really love how you end with a question. So those kinds of comments were peer feedback. And they were really, really pleased and happy and surprised that they did good essays. Now, all the students and some experts graded all the essays. They assessed all the essays, and the experts chose 3 best essays. So at the end, the 3 winners were given certificates, and at the end of the whole process, we reflected through another technological tool that is called Padlet. I am sure that you also use Padlet with your students because that is a friendly tool, and now at this time that we are doing virtual classes, we can use them. We can use Padlet. Now I have to show you the results of this innovation. How did I prove that the students improved their writing performance? So in order to have precise results, of course, I used this rubric, which determined which component had more relevance during this application of the mentor text structure. So, as you see here, content indicated that having students generate ideas, brainstorming ideas, and share opinions in pairs, that means that their writing improved. So for them, it was really, really important to brainstorm ideas, to classify those ideas, and more than brainstorming was peer collaboration. Having someone working with that student was really important because they know that they were working together, that if they made mistakes, the other corrected, and so on. So that was really important. I could notice that the students, the intermediate students, not only like to work individually, they also like to work in groups or work collaboratively. So this is the result of this innovation. I also demonstrate here throughout this table all the 5 constructs of the rubric: content, organization, word choice, sentence fluency, and conventions. As you can see here, it is very clear that the experimental group improved significantly, not only in content, but the rest of the components. It was clearly, and I have to admit, that I needed to practice conventions more. Conventions included spelling, capitalization, subject and verb agreement, punctuation. But here are the results. They really, really improved. They were really motivated doing this activity because they knew that once they passed the course, they would have a better understanding of how to do an essay. But I also wanted to know their opinions about this innovation. their perspectives. And here we are. They were positive. Students' perspective. So these scaffolding strategies also affirm that brainstorming in pairs, having collaboration, having a structure to do a 5-paragraph essay, and using graphic organizers enhance the quality of writing. Enable the students to improve their writing skills. There you are, provided well-structured ideas. The essays were coherent, organized, and of course, the students felt confident. Okay? I also want to show you this table that indicates the student's perspective. And this table, this graph, has 2 strategies: peer collaboration and the structure. So it was really good for me, and I was really pleased to read their opinions, their comments about peer collaboration. And they said that they felt confident and because they interacted each other, and in that way they could develop new ideas, a lot of ideas, when writing this essay. And according to the structure, one of the students said, well, not only one, but like almost the whole group, they said that it was the best structure ever. That all the mentor text was organized, that it looked systematic. They only had to think a little bit to start writing the hook sentence and then the rest of the sentences. So once more, this innovation using the scaffolding strategies show that having a structure, you could do an essay, a paragraph, just applying this mentor text. And here I have a pyramid. In an Ecuadorian EFL context, where learners struggle to break barriers of language, writing in an organized way, and of course, in a coherent way, has become a hard task to develop in students. This pyramid represents the way I scaffolded the learning. I provided the students a structure that lays foundation for a better quality of writing. And then students worked in pairs, sharing ideas, creating new ideas, improving their ideas. And they were learning new knowledge. And that is collaborative work. They work collaboratively to finally produce simple, short essays, well-structured ideas, organized, coherent. Yes, I need to emphasize this. Collaboration among students is an ideal choice to create productive and active learning environments so that students help each other to generate writing tasks. Working in pairs collaboratively in classes prepares students for future work, where what is needed? Team skills is needed in the works. This is something that I wanted to show you too about the release of responsibility in a classroom. What is our responsibility and the student's responsibility? At the beginning of the process, at the beginning of the innovation, of course, the teacher has to be in front of the class, focusing the lesson, giving instructions, guiding them. So I do it. I do for the first time. Then when I guide, the students with all the activities, when I am giving the instructions with all the activities, then we are doing together. Then it is the students' turn. They have to collaborate. They have to work together. In that moment, the students work in pairs, brainstorming ideas, generating ideas. And once they created ideas and improved them, when they finally feel they are ready, they began working on their own, independently. See, my participation is at the beginning of the innovation, at the beginning of this mentor text, but then they worked together. So this is what I had to share with you about scaffolding strategies. Remember, scaffolding strategies for me was the best choice in order to write essays, especially with my intermediate students who really need to know how to write essays. Thank you.
Thanks, Karina, for your presentation. I really enjoy the way you presented it with a little bit of context and some reflection questions for the teachers. What I can say is that this innovation or this implementation, these strategies were in a B1 level with university students for the teachers or the attendants here. So you might have seen some activities for higher level students, but there are the scaffolding activities that Karina presented, like the mentor text, which is an example of what we expect from students that can be applied in all levels. So if you want to have a student write like a descriptive paragraph, then we have to present a mentor text of that descriptive paragraph. And also, if you saw the release of responsibility at the end, of course, at the beginning, as teachers, we have a lot of work, like in the pyramid, you see, a lot of work, and then that goes reduced, and the opposite. Students have little work because, of course, they are watching, and then they become independent. So at the end, the responsibility is of them. Now we have some questions. There were some comments from the participant that says that for students to write, they need to read a lot. And I totally agree, because you need information, you need to have a voice, you need to have ideas. And well, I love reading, and Karina knows that I am a reading fan. So for me, all reading strategies are welcome.
Exactly.
So the questions, the questions, which of the scaffolding strategy was the most relevant, Karina?
Well, undoubtedly, the mentor text, that was the hardest one, but was for me the most relevant, because without that part, the students couldn't do any essay. Of course, we had to take into consideration the brainstorming phase and then the peer collaboration, but the mentor text was really, really hard and was for me the most challenging.
Okay, perfect. Now, if you want information about the master program, Hugo will be sharing some information later. Now we have a second question. What was the most challenging part of this implementation of this process? Also remember that it is not like one class, like Karina started today and finished the next day. No, this is a process of 2 months, 3 months, Karina?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it was like 1 month or 2 months. It was, yeah. I took
Exactly.
2 months to work with the groups, and it is not that innovation finishes there. I continue doing the same thing because I'm still a teacher, so I had to introduce how to write an essay, and I always do the same thing. I always use the scaffolding strategies, and that gave me good results. And well, the most challenging part of this innovation was to make my students feel motivated. That was something really, really hard, because as you said, and my colleagues said, they don't like to read first. And if they don't read, how could they write? So this is something that we need to know. And we know that we need the 4 skills to be integrated. And if one skill is not integrated, so the students are not using the language for a real purpose. So it was really, really hard to motivate them to start writing. It was really, really hard also to make them work together. At the beginning, they didn't want. They wanted to do individually, but I had to work with them. Mhm.
Okay, and yes, I think that is a challenge to have students work together, not only at at your level, the university level, but also in the master level.
Yes.
You tell me. Okay, and another question: how did you get students to? How did you engage students? How did you work with motivation?
Motivation. That was what I had to think a lot before I start classes. I need to motivate myself first, because if they don't see me motivated, how could I motivate them? So perhaps trying to, I always try to talk to them and to feel empathy. I'm not sure. Yeah, empathy with them. Try to understand their needs and their interests. And in that way, I consider that they start feeling motivated. And using these scaffolding strategies, the combination of all of them motivated their participation. The use of answer garden and Padlet, those were the two technological tools, motivated them to continue participating. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, there are also some questions about evaluation, and I know that you use a rubric, right?
Correct.
Now my question is, did students know the components of the rubric? Did you teach students how to use the rubric to like self-assess their work or peer assess their work?
Of course, yes, of course. I gave them the rubric. I explained all the components to them one by one, what the word choice includes in the conventions and the content and sentence fluency. And they knew how to give peer feedback, and they assessed themselves. Yes, they did it. And at the end, we had this post test that showed these positive results about the content and about all the components of the essay.
Okay, very good. And another important idea is that remember that we English teachers in Ecuador have standards, and these topics like writing the essay or some of the other topics that Karina had, they were taken from those standards. So we can also work with the standards. And I think another way to motivate our students is with authentic, real situations. When they see that they are working for something real that they will use later in their lives, then that is like, for I've seen that is that raises their intrinsic motivators. So let's match a school, or let's combine a school with life, and then students will be engaged in our classes.
Absolutely, exactly.
You can start with even with sentences. And there was another comment that I like, is that teachers have to be role models. So if you want us to write, then we have to write, of course. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Karina. It was a great presentation. And now we will continue with some important information for the English teachers that are very interested in knowing more about our program. By the way, Karina studied the master with us, and what she shared was her research that she conducted at the end. But of course, the focus here was the implementation, the strategies of the innovation, the strategies for improving writing in the students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Karina. Very interesting topic. Definitely, you have given us great ideas to implement in our own classes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivo.
Yeah, well, now I'm gonna give general information about our master program. This information will be in Spanish, by the way, just in case we have public who doesn't speak English. Just give me some minutes to share. Okay. All right. Just 1 second. There we go. And you can see it now, right? Bien. Listo, pues queremos darles una información general, ¿no? Acerca del programa de maestría en general que actualmente estamos promocionando, ofertando, ¿no? Que es, by the way, es de 1 año de duración y próximamente está por aperturarse online, ¿no? Tentativamente empezaríamos en mayo de este año para los que estén interesados con nuestra maestría online, ¿no? También tenemos la versión semipresencial que la estamos planificando para el mes de septiembre tentativamente, ¿no? Esperemos que ya hasta ese mes estemos ya un poco más normalizados con todo lo que ha pasado, ¿no? Bien, el perfil de ingreso de nuestra maestría es para profesionales en ciencias de la educación, lingüística inglesa, psicología, o algún título en otra área con suficiencia en el idioma inglés y con experiencia, obviamente, en el ámbito educativo, ¿no? Tenemos profesionales de distintas áreas, no solamente de educación, pero están relacionados o trabajan en el área educativa, ¿no? Bien, como les decía, tenemos de 2 semestres o 1 año de duración, incluido el proceso de titulación, las modalidades semipresencial o en línea. La en línea es la que está más próxima a abrirse. Los horarios de clase, bueno, han cambiado un poco. Van a ser viernes y sábados, ¿no?
Unos comentarios ahí muy buenos, pero yo, Dios mío. Ay, señor.
Sí, viernes y sábados, como les decía, ¿no? Bien, esta es la malla curricular. Se divide en 2 ciclos. Se divide en 2 ciclos. Entonces, tenemos 5 materias por cada ciclo, ¿no? O por cada periodo. Bien, para ser admitida al programa, usted debe de aprobar un curso propedéutico, que le llamamos, en el cual usted va a tener conocimientos sobre ofimática, sobre nuestra plataforma de Moodle de la Universidad Casa Grande y pensamiento abstracto, ¿no? Esto se da en 2 fines de semana, que ya les voy a indicar las fechas. Estamos por empezar un curso, ¿no? Uno de los requisitos para nuestra maestría es que usted tenga el certificado B2 de suficiencia de inglés. Obviamente debe ser una copia color, ¿no? Preferiblemente notarizada, con 2 años o menos de vigencia, ¿no? Puede ser el de Cambridge, o los de Michigan, TOEFL, TOEIC. Tenemos también el ITAP o el de Pearson. Estos son entre los más comunes que son aceptados, que puedan avalar su nivel B2 o superior, ¿no? También tenemos el IELTS, que son también aprobados, ¿no? El FCE de Cambridge. Como les decía, estas son las fechas. El propedéutico que está por empezar este 23 de enero. El fin de semana, bueno, viernes y sábado, perdón, sábado y domingo serían las clases, ¿no? 23, 24, 30 y 31 de enero, ¿no? En estos horarios, de 8:30 a 2:30 y de 1:30 a 5:30, ¿no? Entonces, si necesita tener disponibilidad estos 2 fines de semana. Bien. Esto es de forma general cómo se ve, ¿no? La plataforma virtual, ¿no? El campus virtual de la Universidad Casa Grande, en el cual una vez que usted se inscribe en el programa, usted va a tener acceso al material que los docentes facilitan, ¿no? Y bien, ¿cómo puede financiarlo? ¿Cuál es el precio, ¿no? Actualmente, todo incluido, la colegiatura está en 5.500, lo que es la maestría en línea, y la semipresencial, que como les digo nuevamente, empezaría posteriormente, ¿no? Tentativamente en septiembre de este año, y en línea empezaría en mayo, ¿no? Estamos todavía ajustando eso. Tenemos varios descuentos, ¿no? O beneficios que pueden acogerse, ¿no? Si usted es parte del Fondo de Cesantía del Magisterio Ecuatoriano, usted puede hacer, si usted es afiliado, perdón, usted puede recibir un 30% de descuento en la colegiatura total, ¿no? Si usted hace un solo pago, la universidad lo beneficia con un 25% de descuento, es decir, de 5.500, usted le hacen un descuento del 25% a ese valor, ¿no? Si usted es parte del Mineduc o el MIES, o si usted paga semestralmente, usted se beneficia de un 10% de descuento. Y bueno, trabajamos con casi todas las tarjetas de crédito, ¿no? Y usted lo puede diferir dependiendo, eso sí, de su entidad bancaria, ¿no? Bien, para más información, estaremos recibiéndolas, ¿no? Al correo que se presenta, maestría medio inglés @casagrande.edu.es. También los que quieran información más detallada, he puesto un enlace, ¿no? He puesto un enlace en nuestra ventana principal, ¿no? En el chat, perdón, en el chat, para que ustedes puedan llenar, ¿no? Llenar el mismo. Y si tienen alguna pregunta, pues nos puedan dirigir, ¿no? Cualquier consulta. Entonces estaremos gustosos de atenderles y darles toda la información necesaria, tanto de la parte académica como la parte financiera, ¿no? Por mi parte, muchas gracias. Le doy paso a Oscar. ¿Está por ahí?
Gracias, Hugo. Sí, ya les he compartido también el formulario para el certificado digital y pues muchísimas gracias a todos los que nos acompañaron. Los esperamos en un nuevo webinar de la maestría de idiomas. Gracias, Hugo. Gracias a todos por ser parte del webinar. Hasta luego.